NSCoder. Want to thank M1 Finance and Patrick McCarron for doing a great job hosting us. We have a code of conduct, so please don't be a jerk. If someone's being a jerk, let Sean or myself or Patrick know and we'll handle it. Just a little housekeeping. We did it. We have 1,000 members. It's good to see you all here. Okay. Tonight we have Darby. He's going to talk. So let's give it up to Darby. I share my screen. Oh, yeah, like that. All right. And then I would do the whole thing. Oh, like that. Yeah. One of them, but all right. Good. So we're all right. Cool. All right. Okay. Hey everyone. Thanks, Jacob. Thanks everyone for setting this up. So yeah, my name is Darby. I work at a company called GitLab, and I'm going to talk about mobile DevOps. I have some notes, so I'm going to look at my notes too. Quick show of hands. Has anyone here heard of GitLab? Okay, awesome. Has anyone used it before? And does anyone use it at their company? All right, hooray. We got one. Cool. So I'll do the little thing. So if you don't know, GitLab is a DevOps platform. So we provide all the tools kind of needed for software delivery in one place. So sort of like if you combine Trello, GitHub, and Circle CI into one app. GitLab is also open source. You can use it on GitLab.com and self-managed on-premise. So I'm going to talk a little bit about mobile DevOps and why I think it's important. A lot of times mobile DevOps or DevOps in general gets associated with CI/CD, which is pretty common. But my goal today is to show a little bit about that there's a little more to it and to kind of think about how you can apply some of these principles wherever you work or the projects that you work on. So a little history lesson. So back in the before time, like many organizations structured themselves in a way that created a wall between development and operations. So you'd get like this situation where the development team would build something and they'd hand it over to ops and they'd put it on a server and run it. And they'd hand it back when it broke or when there was a bug. And then the dev team would fix it and hand it back. And you'd have this like handoff going back and forth. This obviously led to all kinds of issues. But I imagine this sounds familiar to some folks. Around 2007, 2008, like this DevOps thing kind of started to take shape. The idea was to bring the two groups together and align their objectives around sort of common goals. So these DORA metrics were created. Has anyone heard of DORA metrics before? Yeah, DORA metrics. So these are kind of like, the idea is to create a few of these aligned metrics that can make the teams work together. So you have sort of this like North Star that is, all right, guys, figure this out, make this happen. And the reality is like these metrics flow through all the way to product development. So like your product managers, your UX people are all aligned around this stuff because it all kind of affects the way the software is delivered. So the popular DORA metrics are deployment frequency, which is kind of the common one that people point to, which is like, get your deployments multiple times a day. But the other ones are pretty important. So lead time to change is going to be like, if you have an idea, how long does it take you to get from that idea to something that a customer can see? And then the other ones are about sort of failure. So change failure rate is if you push a change, how often, or what is your bug rate, like that kind of stuff. And then time to restore is like, how quickly can you roll back or can you recover from something like that? So in order to accomplish this, sort of the core principles of DevOps are focused around automation, which is sort of like the easiest thing for engineers to to wrap your head around. We love building automation and tools. Collaboration is more of a soft skill. So this is about like where you're communicating. So like what systems are you putting information in, and do all your stakeholders have access to that? How you communicate, and sort of like, are things written down, or are they just discussed in a meeting and never sort of captured in an artifact? And then like what you focus on in communication. So like, the example that I always go to is like a product manager creates an issue in a backlog that's just like 3 words, and they know what it means, but no one else in the team know what it means. And so like the what is also important. Create a detailed description of what you're doing so things don't get lost in translation. Continuous improvement is really about like just always looking for ways to improve this process and make things better. And then short feedback loops. People often think short feedback loops means getting your features to customers and getting their input quickly, which is super important. But it actually can be applied to any part of this process. So if you're doing a re-architecture, you're doing a performance improvement, like get feedback on that as quickly as you can. So like historically, mobile is like left out of this conversation. Like this works really well when you're releasing an app to the internet, but when you're putting something on a device in the wild, it's very different. So what is like mobile DevOps then? Well, it's the same thing, but like the principles are the same, but like the tools and the metrics are different. So like on the one hand, like mobile teams are often more closely involved in the operations of their apps than their front end or back end counterparts. But on the other hand, the tooling and the automation is a little less mature, and it's kind of out of the wheelhouse of a lot of folks that are building mobile stuff. Just a quick question, I'm curious. So like if you have CI at your company, how many of you are doing some sort of mobile CI in your day job? Keep your hands up if the person that set that up no longer works at the company. It's like about half the time when I talk to people, they're like, we have a CI thing, but we don't know how it works and we're afraid to touch it. That's super common. So our metrics aren't really needed to align incentives in mobile because you're not like collaborating with operations that much, but there are variations of this that are still like impactful and useful. So the first 4 are kind of same variations on regular DORA metrics, but there's also metrics that can be tracked around like release step timing or approval reviews, and this can be internal and external reviews. So like the metrics aren't like really well established here, but just putting some metrics in place for a team is like super helpful just to get started. So I'm going to talk a little bit about like the different stages and just like the tools that are involved. I'll try to go through these quick, so I don't want to bore everyone. So like the plan stage, that's your issues and your backlogs. That's maybe Jira or Trello or whatever. The code stage is going to be your local development environment. Build is where you get to your source code management, your code reviews, things like that. Testing is your automated testing. And if you don't have automated testing, it's where your QA would sit. Release is building and packaging your app, building that artifact that's going to be shipped up to an app store. And then deploy is actually the deploy step. The operate step is going to be where in a traditional DevOps setup, that's the servers and the server management and stuff. But here it's really kind of just running an app on a phone. But you still might have feature flags, and that would fall into this area. And then monitor is going to be like error and crash reporting metrics and like any sort of user feedback you get from like app store review or just like feedback forms and stuff. So when you're like, if you go back to the core principles, right? Like take that and look at the DevOps lifecycle through that lens. So like if you're looking at where you can add automation into your process, if you already have automated CI, there's maybe other places you can do it. At GitLab, we have a bunch of automation around our issues. So we have a whole huge backlog of like issues that have due dates or SLOs or something associated with them. And we have automation that's watching all that stuff to make sure that it gets surfaced at the right time. And so engineering managers get the information they need when they need to act on something. So we build a bunch of automation there. To improve collaboration. The example I always go to on that is like when you're, have you ever like shipped a feature or made a change that surprised someone in the organization or like upset another team? That's like maybe a good candidate for like fixing a collaboration problem. Doing a mini retrospective and like trying to figure out what the core problem was is a good thing to think about. And it could be in any step of this, right? It could be like maybe the issues in the backlog need to be exposed to sales teams or something like that. So that's improved collaboration. Continuous improvement is just kind of what this all is, right? We're just looking at this and looking for areas to improve. And then shortening feedback loops. The classic one for this is improving your test speeds, right? So like if you can run your automated tests faster, you can get feedback faster. That's great. We should definitely do that. But pushing feedback up in the process is even better. Preview apps is a big thing that I really like. This is where you can preview a change in a code review. So if you have a pull request or merge request, you can boot up an instance of the app right there with that version of the code, and your product manager can look at it, or whoever needs to look at it and can review it there. So you don't have to wait till the thing gets deployed and run through all the tests and stuff. So so these are some examples, but think about how, like, you know, whatever the challenges are in your organization and in the software process, like look at it through this lens and see where there can be improvements. Let's see. Yeah, I've listed some tools that are focused on mobile DevOps here. Has anyone ever used any of these? Like Bitrise, AppCircle? Anyone use them today? Yeah. Okay, cool. I'll chat with you later. So I'll just wrap up with a quick slide on the stuff I'm doing at GitLab. So yeah, it says our mission here to improve software delivery performance and stuff. And kind of like on the previous slide, I've got, you know, GitLab listed on most of these things. Our goal is really to build one app that does all of it. It's our goal. We're not there yet today, but you know, we're working on it. We're always adding new things. So with mobile DevOps, we're basically like extending the features that GitLab already has to make things better for mobile. So this is going to be like building on top of the epics and the source code management and code review and the CI that we already have to add all of these kind of capabilities that make building mobile apps better. The things that we're focused on right now is kind of listed here. This is like build environments. So this will be Mac build runners. We've got some features that make code signing easier and an integration with Fastlane Match. We also just launched an Apple App Store integration, which is making like releasing a lot easier. We'll do a Google Play one later this month too. And those are also designed to work with the Fastlane like release features. There's a review app feature. So this is like that idea of a preview app. If you've ever used Appetize, which is like this mobile emulator in a browser, you can take a merge request, you can throw it into Appetize and you can test it right there in the merge request. So that's hopefully getting feedback sooner. And then we also have some static security testing tools. And then lastly, we try to like hook this stuff into Fastlane and leverage Fastlane where we can. I think that's about it. Yeah, I guess like I said, GitLab is open source. Love contributions. And then we also work in public. So I have these links up here. You can go and look at like the product roadmap. You can see the backlog. You can throw in comments and tell us stuff that you want and see what we're working on. I also do like an update, like a video update every month on like the status of things. So you can get that on there too. So that's it. Thank you. I will answer any questions.
I've been watching the video of you for a long time.
You still can.
I got the deck with.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What's the security analysis that you're doing?
It's Oh, yeah, good call. The question was, what security analysis are we doing? I think it is MobSF is the tool that we're using, and it just like hooks into the CI pipelines. And then we have a reporting thing that shows up in the merge request widget that will, you can configure it if you want to like fail to build on security vulnerabilities, or like what threshold you want there. Cool.
Cool.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Darby. All right.
The other person will be me. I will be talking about Swift Regex. Okay, hey everybody, it's me again. I'm Jacob, I work at Etsy. And before we start, I really need to apologize. This is coming from my deep soul. I have the habit of saying reg in regex, like Reginald Val Johnson, not regular. So if I say that, I apologize. Please forgive me. This is an open, safe space. I just want to get that out of the way. Okay. Recently, I was tasked with thinking about deep links. And if you don't know what those are, they're also known as universal links. And they're a way to have a URL open your app. You touch this, it goes to there. Deep linking is a process that is comprised of multiple steps with various actors. And that means that there's a lot of things that have to happen before the user can see the intent of the URL. Here's a whole list of them. But what I was tasked with was just the parsing part, which is determining the intent of the URL and then pulling out the information that you need from it. With me so far? So to simplify that, URL string goes in, information maybe gets pulled out, and destination goes out. And so when you think of string and you think of parsing, you probably think regex. And if you think of regex, you probably think face melting. After all, what's not clear about this? Super simple, right? That's for email validation, by the way. Okay, so let's back up. Here's the Wikipedia entry on regex, but basically it's a way to match patterns in text, right? That's primarily what you use it for. And so for our case, what we're going to do is we're going to use this regex of listing and then a digit, and then we're matching against the URL that comes into the app for the listing, right? And so you're going to match of that. This is in that. And then you have a capture as well. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So if we break this whole regex down, you have the start, which is this slash. You have a slash in the URL, you have listing, another slash, and then you have a capture group, which matches a digit and many after that, and then a slash, and then you're done. Easy. And when I say capture, it's a group and their way to treat multiple characters as a single unit later. So you are capturing that group to use later. If you're not sure about this, or if you want to play around with it, Regex 101 is really great. It gives you opportunity to debug and test, and it gives a really clear explanation of what's going on. I highly suggest it. And if you want to use it, you got NS regular expression. It's introduced in 2010. It's iOS 4 and above, so your app probably supports it. And it's an Objective-C. And here's some code. Brings a tear to my eye. And you're probably like, bruh, wasn't this about Swift Regex? So let's get to it. Swift Regex was introduced last year, iOS 16 and above only, and it's Swift only. So let's go back to my problem of deep linking. I knew that we were going to get a string that we wanted to match. We're also going to want to pull out information with those captures. And Swift Regex is cool because Apple says it's cool and they never lie to us, right? So I watched the WWDC video and I learned that Swift Regex allows flexible way to check and it captures groups and it's way better than its regular expression. So what's not to love? So this is the first thing I try to do. You'll see I have enum of destination, and we don't just have one destination, we have many, but this gives you an idea. It's a listing. And I have a protocol and it says, I want these rules. So for instance, a rule might be a regex for something like HTTP. Don't care about the hosts. I only want this part, right? Or we have this scheme. I want listing and the numbers, right? And so we have this protocol. It will have any regex. Try to do that, and it was like, no way, can't do that, because regex has to have an argument for the generic type. Do you want to insert any? And so I did what everyone does. I just press fix, right? And so off I go. I start this class for listing deeply root that adheres to that protocol. And you'll see I have my rules, regex any, because I press fix, and I start creating the regex, right? And I go to town, and then all of a sudden, no, right? Why not? Well, it can't convert this to what I put in, regex any. What's with that? And so this is where we're going to get to my talk. Of course, I have to feature this guy. And so what's going on here is there's actually 3 distinct different types of way of using Swift regex. That's right, 3. And they're all slightly different, somewhat incompatible, and have their own pros and cons. So let's go through them. For all of these, we're going to be using this URL, just so you can get this out of the way. It's just a normal listing URL. Type number 1, string-based regex. Okay, so line by line, we're going to create the regex by try, regex, and then we're going to give it the string of the regex. We're going to get an output of regex that's typed to any regex output, and then we're going to use it. And you're like, what? Any regex what? According to the docs, it's a type erased dynamic output of a regular expression match. Like, what does that mean? It means that it's a generic type that contains one or more matches of any type. And even more human, really anything goes. Good luck, have fun. So back to this. We can see that if it matches, it will return the first match, right? We have first match. But then we can look at it and print out the first answer, which is the first match, right? But if you look at that regex, that's not what I had before. It has extra slashes in there because it's escaping all those slashes. So what's going on there? What can you do about that? This isn't new, just regex. You can use that anywhere else, but you can use pound, and then you no longer have to escape it, which is pretty nice. So that's pretty much what I printed. I put into regex 101. So that's the second more clear string. But what can you do about captures? Now you'll see that I put the group here, the parentheses. And so now what I have is I have a string with capture regex max, do the same thing where I get the first match, but you'll see the first one is the match, but then we have this, it's actually an array of matches. And so you have first, which is this, the same thing, but then you have last, and that's the capture. Again, we don't know what it is, we just know it's there. So we can't say it's an integer for sure. Now, if you really want to get wild, you can name them, which is kind of nice. Use this question mark, bracket, listing, and that way you named it. Later on, when you're doing the output, you can actually do a subscript and pull it out, which is kind of cool. You can see I can print it out right there. Okay, so to recap the string-based, This is more dynamic, right? You could pass in this from your API and hope it works and get out your, your answer. But you have to have a try there. And if it doesn't work, it won't work, right? This would crash it because it has the exclamation mark, but hopefully you're catching your errors and gracefully. Yeah, so very dynamic, but very generic output. So let's move on. Type number 2, Swift regex literal regex. Yeah, that sounds right. Here we're going to do this new format. You'll see I no longer have try. I now have no regex. It's right there, right? This is just what I had in regex 101. I just plop it right in and it creates a regex with a tuple of substring and substring. So what does that mean? If I put in garbage regex, it will actually not work at all. And I cannot compile because this is actually checked by the compiler, which is super nice. This means that Swift knows what the input is as well as the output. So if you look at the output type, you'll see it's no longer any regex output, but a tuple of the matches. And I want to reiterate this, a tuple of the matches. Now, why is that a problem? Much like if you had a body containing 2 text views in Swift UI, it would give you a tuple view of text and text. Swift regex creates a regex with a tuple of exactly how many different groups you're going to have and what types they are. Is that clear? Thanks for nodding, Josh. I really appreciate it. So that means when you're trying to compare the two, or if you're trying to build a anonymous, like a protocol, it doesn't work because Swift regex is not the same if it's any regex output or regex substring. Okay. The nice thing is now you can pull out those values with 0 and 1 instead of first and last. It's no longer optional. You know exactly what's in there, right? It's a tuple. You got substring and substring, which is 0 and 1. But if you change it again, let's say we had a longer URL with listing, the ID, something else, and then another ID, right? It could happen. Now you have regex, substring, 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 and guess what? That doesn't match either, right? So you better hope that all of your URLs are all the same type or it doesn't work. Well, we don't have that, so it's not going to work. Back to the naming of the captures, you can use the same format with a question mark bracket and then listing. But instead of having subscripting, it actually is just a property, which is pretty cool, right? Now, again, I have to reiterate, it's not the same because you have substring string. Now you have substring listing substring, and it won't be the same. Okay, so back to the simplest iteration of this again, compile time checking and known outputs. They give great consistency and known outcomes. This is really nice, but it's compiled and it's not dynamic, so you can't change this flexible. Also, the type changes if the number or type of components change. Okay, type number 3, and this is the nicest one. It's a lot of ooze. Swift regex builder. Before you start, you have to import regex builder. You didn't have to do that before with regex. It was built into Swift. This is its own library. But once you do, you can do something like this. You start with a regex, and then you build it like you would a Swift UI view, right? So here we have listing, just a string, and then we have capture 1 or more digit, which is way more readable than something that looks like Perl. What you get is the static type of like what you had before with the literal. You have regex substring substring, and they can use it like you did before. But isn't this way more readable? In fact, if we go back to our joke before, this is for email pattern, which is a lot more readable than that line of different colors and all that stuff. Okay. One thing I did find a little weird about this is named captures are a little bit, like I would have expected, as I put here, capture named your name, but instead it's like a reference. And you have to capture as a kind of that reference, which is a little strange to me and not what I would expect, but it still works. And then you pull it out, results, and it's a subscript again. Am I wrong, Jeff? Is this? Okay, thanks. This is the only weird part about this, I suppose. Anyways, they offer a lot of stuff that Regex offers. I don't think it's 100% complete, but it's pretty darn close. You know, you have look ahead and negative look ahead. These are things I don't know anything about, but they're there. But you can see the 1 or optionally or 0 or more or 1 or more. These make sense. And then for the character types, you got a whole bunch of stuff. Sorry, this is so small. I'll just read a couple of them. Horizontal white space or date or URL. These are things you'd have to like build a really long regex for that it takes care of it for you. So that's super nice. Okay, back to the simplest iteration. It's easier to read, but it's not cross-compatible elsewhere. Remember, I was able to just like copy and paste that regex from regex 101 and just put it in. Or what if your web team wants to enable it and you just can't copy and paste it, you have this whole other thing, but it is a lot nicer to read, right? Also, name captures aren't as nice. Okay, so what did I do? If you remember, I can't have like a generic regex that could go across all of my deep links. So instead I created, like, I just want to read it. This is what I had before. Instead, what I created is a rule. And I thought like really what I care about are each individual components of the URL. In this case, the scheme, the host, the path, the queries, and whether it matches. That's really all I care about. And so for my example of the external one, I care about this scheme having this in the path. That's all I care about. I don't care about the host. I don't care about the queries, any of that stuff. And so I have an array of these, and that works for both internal and external URLs. And then for pulling out the information, I still get to use Swift regex because for each individual destination, I get to form what I want to pull it out. So in this case, I say, this is the regex. I want to capture this number. And then I'm going to create the destination with that number. So again, I get to use it in a flexible way that allows me to use Swift regex in a way that's just purely for this example. Okay, so to wrap it all up, there's 3 different ways to use Swift regex. They all have their pros and cons. It's not as flexible as what you might think, but it still gets the job done. And I think it's better than the very generic NS regular expression, which is fine. It's a great tool on its own. But just, you got to know those trade-offs. So thank you very much. I saw someone on the Zoom had a question, but then it got answered. So way to go, me. Does anyone else have any questions? Jeff, anything? No, okay. Well, let's go back. Oh yeah, I should have. Sorry, he didn't pay me for that though. Let's see here. I'll post some notes, including some links to Darby and his videos tomorrow on CocoaHeads, and I'll post a link to the playground that you can use that have all of these examples of Swift regex. You can play around if you want. Sean, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, this will probably be on YouTube.
Oh yeah, this will also be on YouTube, so we can make all that money. Patrick, you got anything else? Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
You have a literal regex,
You import Regex Builder.
Do you want, here, why don't you say so people at home?
If you have a literal regex and you import regex builder, you can highlight it, right click it, and it will build the long version in regex builder.
He got a question, can it go the other way?
The other way.
I don't know. I don't know.
Question was, yeah, if you can go the other way, and the answer was, I don't know.
Come back next month.
All I know is that like debugging, like, or like when you print it out, it's like, this is the regex, and it's like, but it doesn't tell you what it is or what the equivalent would, which would be nice, so. File radar. Anyway, okay, well, there's still more pizza. Please enjoy. Thanks for coming, and that's it.